Hello everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to my 4th versus video. We're closing in on the end of the series, at least for now, and in the last episode I asked you guys to vote. Should I do Black Mage versus Summoner next, or Bard versus Machinist? Well, if you click this video, you know that the winner of that vote was Bard versus Machinist, so let's jump right in. Please keep in mind this video is not meant to dissuade you from playing the job you enjoy, but hopefully it can help you determine which you'd like to play if choosing just now. Also, just so we're clear, this role, while it is fulfilling a DPS slot, has high amounts of utility in exchange for lower DPS numbers as a whole. They also both benefit from the Dragoon's Disembowel debuff. First, let's start with the Bard. This job was the game's flagship ranged physical DPS. Shooting arrows from a range, this combines its high damage over time, proc-based DPS, and powerful songs to make for what was and is still considered to be a damn near mandatory job for any raid composition. Bard has 3 primary songs it offers to all nearby raid members in combat at the cost of some MP every few seconds. The first song is Army's Paean, which restores TP to nearby party members, while Mage's Ballad restores MP to nearby party members. These 2 songs also have a side effect that lowers the Bard's DPS by 20% while they are singing this, so you don't want to sing them too often. Only sing them when they are necessary. The other song, Foe's Requiem, doesn't reduce the Bard's damage thankfully, and instead simply increases the amount of magic damage that nearby enemies take. This includes all damage dealt by Black Mages, Summoners, minus FFXIV, White Mages, Scholars, and Astrologians, as well as most of the ninja's offensive ninjutsu. These songs can be enhanced with Battle Voice, a long cooldown ability that doubles the effectiveness of these 3 songs to nearby party members and enemies. Unfortunately, the Bard doesn't get the boosted effects. Sad face. Bard does have 3 other songs, but they are more limited in their effects. Swift Song is a song you can only use out of combat that grants movement speed to those around you. Good for getting around dungeons faster and town, I suppose, as well. The Warden's Peen can be cast on a single ally to absorb 1 negative status ailment for 30 seconds. It barely ever works outside of the Warrior's pacification from Berserk, so don't expect to use it a lot. Finally, Wanderer's Minuet is a staple song that will become mandatory to learn and maintain for damage as you get past level 50. It is an instant cast song that grants all of the Bard's weapon skills a cast time and removes their ability to auto attack, in exchange for dealing increased damage and unlocking key spells for their rotation. I say spells because most people call them the Bow Mage because of this. While it does lower their mobility, Bards can still take steps between abilities, performing a little minuet of their own if they're able to move around the arena. Whenever a Bard gets a straighter shot proc though, this ability has no cast time, which can help a bit with mobility. Other than the songs, Bards do offer some interesting and unique utilities. Shadowbind can bind targets in place, Blunt Arrow can silence, and Rain of Death reduces evasion for all targets it hits. This evasion reduction is mostly useful to help ensure that healers can land damaging spells, though it does also help in PvP. Outside of this, the Bard mostly focuses on doing large bursts of damage while maintaining decent damage over time. One key aspect is that when their dots crit, there is a chance their abilities, either Bloodletter or Rain of Death, will have their cooldowns reset, making it so that you always have to be on the lookout for this. Rain of Death is better on 2 or more targets, while Bloodletter is preferred on 1. But again, sometimes it's more beneficial to keep that evasion debuff on some of the bosses so the healers can land their spells more accurately. Bard's cross-class skills come from Pugilist and Lancer. From Pugilist, it's considered mandatory to take internal release since crit rate functions so well for the job, while also opting in for the personal heal of Second Wind. Lancer is required for Invigorate and Blood for Blood, while the 5th ability is really up in the air. Some take Mantra or Keen Flurry for the extra defensive ability. It's also pretty common to take Feint, as it is unaffected by Wanderer's Minuet's cast time effect, and can help fit in GCDs when you're on the run. However, it's not recommended that you spam it when you need to move. If you're going to need to move for that long, it's better to just take off Minuet. On rare occasions, Bards have been seen taking Haymaker and can actually be worth it for the slightly higher attack potency in place of Heavy Shot. This is only if you know for certain you will dodge an attack, such as on turn 7 or Thornton Extreme. Internal Release and Blood for Blood, combined with the job's personal buffs, make for a lot of buff management. The Bard additionally has Raging Strikes to increase their damage, and Hawkseye to increase their dexterity, which will increase damage, and their accuracy, further increasing what they are capable of putting out in a very short period of time. Just be sure to use Quelling Strike so you don't rip aggro at the start of the fight. So the pros of the Bard are abundantly clear. It has pretty good DPS and extremely high utility. Songs are considered invaluable on endgame fights, whether that's to push more DPS or to ensure that people don't run out of resources like MP or TP. They have decent AoE DPS as well, especially with the addition of the Rain of Death procs in Heavensward, on top of their other AoE skills such as Flaming Arrow and their standard AoEs. They can also dot up multiple targets, which can make it so you get tons of procs and, if you can maintain it, does great damage. On fights that have 2 primary targets to damage, Bard's numbers shoot through the roof if they keep dots up on both of them. A1 Savage is a great example. The Silence and Evasion Down utilities are highly valued and cutting-edge endgame content when applicable, while the Bind has its occasional use. Finally, while Wanderer's Minuet cuts it down, the job's mobility is still considered high, especially since it can opt into removing Minuet for long stretches of movement while DPSing, though it's preferred that you do that stutter step thing that I was mentioning when you're trying to move to an intended location while maintaining Wanderer's Minuet. And honestly, the cons of the job are really just up to the individual players who decide whether or not they like the job. Some people say that they outright hate Bard as a ranged DPS instead of a dedicated support, while others hate that Bard is a ranged DPS that loses damage because of its high support. Some players also have a hard time or didn't enjoy adjusting to Wanderer's Minuet when it was added in the expansion, as it was a sharp change in playstyle after 2 years of unlimited mobility in A Realm Reborn. That being said, I wouldn't say there's anything inherently wrong with the job. If you enjoy the playstyle, you can make a serious impact on the raid scene, both in your DPS and in how much people are begging you to give them songs. And then we compare it to the Machinist. Now, after all that I said about the Bard, calling it a staple in the raid scene, the Machinist was actually created in 3.0 to replicate that same utility, while also offering some more unique utilities and a unique playstyle. Armed with multifunction turrets and an ammo system that requires constant upkeep, the Machinist feels like more of the same as Bard while also feeling completely different. The turrets I mentioned can be placed by the Machinist and can either deal damage or offer utility, or both. The Rook turret attacks the same target as the Machinist by default. It can be promoted to stop attacking and offer TP in an AoE around it at the cost of the Machinist MP. The Bishop turret deals damage in an AoE around it, and can be transformed into giving an AoE MP restore. All of these effects can be further enhanced with the ability Hypercharge. Hypercharge will double the potency of the turret's attacks and give them additional effects when in their attacking mode. The Rook will cause the target to take 5% increased physical damage for 24 seconds about, while the Bishop will cause it to take 5% increased magic damage. If the turrets are in the resource giving mode during Hypercharge, it will instead double the amount of TP or MP regeneration that they grant. Now, while that sounds a lot like what the Bard offers, with its own unique twist, the other major system is their ammo system, which is accessed in the form of Reload and Quick Reload. Reload grants the Machinist 5 ammo. Each ammo increases the potency of the next weapon skill used by 20, while also ensuring that abilities that have the chance to proc the use of another ability will succeed. It's going to be hard to describe that really in this video. It's vital because the Machinist's main combo actually has a 50% chance of proccing the next step of the combo, as opposed to it being an automatic 1-2-3 combo. The Quick Reload ability will grant 1 ammo on a much shorter cooldown, as well as granting some TP. Then you have everything else that brings the Machinist job together. You have a close range stun, a silence, a bind, a heavy, and a knockback. Now, some of these abilities share a cooldown, but you're pretty much equipped with CC for any situation. They can also reduce a target's physical or magical power with the use of Dismantle or Rend Mind, which of course also do share a cooldown. The job also has a mechanic similar to Wanderer's Minuet with its Gauss Barrel, though keep in mind that any of the procs that I mentioned earlier that a Machinist gets will incur no cast time just like with Straighter Shot, so it can feel a little bit less cumbersome since you're usually getting these procs far more often. Other than that, most of its remaining abilities just help improve its DPS, as well as grant access to some useful AoE damage. One of the more important abilities here is Wildfire, which stores 25% of most damage dealt over its duration and explodes when it wears off. It's common to see experienced machinists make this one ability hit for over 10,000 with its massive power. For cross-class skills, the Machinist benefits from both Archer and Lancer. Lancer, I think after the melee video and the Bard previously, I think you guys know what I'm going to say, right? From Archer, you take Hawk's Eye and Raging Strikes, as well as Quelling Strikes, making this one of the few jobs in the game where all 5 slots are pretty much taken up by mandatory cross-class skills. Now, the pros of the Machinist include its unique playstyle and over-the-top utility. I mean, it literally has something for everything. Reduce the enemy damage, whether it's physical or magical. It can interrupt attacks with a silence or a stun. It can knock back, it can bind, it can heavy. It can grant MP or TP in an AoE. It can reduce the target's physical or magical defense. It's literally got all the bases covered. It also offers decent damage on top of that. I mean, do I really need to say much else about the Machinist? It's such a versatile job combined with an interesting way of accessing its damage. Now, while I say interesting, some would call it a nuisance. The job, while it is as versatile as it is, suffers from some setbacks. When compared to Foe's Requiem and Reign of Death, and only one dedicated caster DPS, the raid damage increase from the Bard usually outweighs the utilities of the Machinist, including the increased physical damage debuff. On top of that, at least according to FF logs, Bards generally output more personal DPS on top of that. This combined with the fact that Machinist is the harder job to play, or at least most would consider that, makes it less favored than the Bard. I feel that if we get fights that make better use of the Machinist's wide array of utilities, you'll see it rise to power more, but until then, it does feel weaker than the Bard. With that, I think you can tell that I'm going to actually do a ranking here at the end of this versus video. I've tried to keep them close with the other ones. I made all the melees kind of equal in my eyes, and I had some sort of strong opinions about the tank ones, but in this one, I see a clear winner, and that is the Bard. I mean, it's really hard to debate. The numbers are there, the information is there, people have been researching it for some time. While I personally think the Machinist is more fun to play than the Bard, that doesn't change that Foes and Reign of Death are just so valued right now. When raid DPS becomes less of a concern in Alexander Midas, I have a feeling that this versus video is going to be irrelevant. And honestly, right now, with all the gear that's available, it doesn't matter that the Bard does more damage, has those slightly better utilities, because if people are playing their jobs properly, you can enjoy any job in the game, and that is the truth. But I had to pick a winner for this video because it was just too clear to me. I find Bard to be the better job of the two, and is the one that I would personally bring to a raid over Machinist. Sorry, Machinist, but don't worry, if you're good, I still love you. Anyway, what do you think about the Bard versus Machinist matchup? Let me know in the comment section of the video below. And also, hopefully you're looking forward to Black Mage versus Summoner, because we want to wrap this series up not too long after Blade and Soul comes out on Friday, at least with early access. Anyway, I will see you guys in the final versus video coming to a YouTube channel near you soon. Okay, on that lame comment, I'm just going to leave now. Okay, bye-bye, everyone.